Which place on Earth is considered the most dangerous that you absolutely should not set foot in? We have explored almost every corner of this planet, including uninhabitable regions in the 5 poles, among which the Arctic is included in that list. So what causes these two locations to be so dangerous? The difference between the Arctic and Antarctica mainly lies in geographical and environmental characteristics. The Arctic is a frozen ocean surrounded by continents, while Antarctica is an icy continent surrounded by ocean. The climate in Antarctica is much harsher than the Arctic, with significantly lower average temperatures. The ecosystems at the 2 poles also differ, with characteristic species such as polar bears in the north and penguins in the south. On Earth, there are 2 polar regions: Arctic, Antarcticos. The Arctic is a vast ocean covered by ice, surrounded by permafrost regions. Even trees cannot survive there. When standing at the North Pole, no matter which direction you look, it is all south. The North Pole is located in the middle of an ocean, covered by a thick layer of ice and constantly moving. If you accidentally fall into the water, you will immediately freeze and sink to depths of up to 4,000 meters. On the water surface, the average winter temperature can drop below -40 degrees Celsius. And the coldest temperature ever recorded is approximately -68 degrees Celsius. Despite the harsh conditions here, humans have lived in the Arctic for thousands of years. Besides humans, the Arctic ecosystem includes many species living on the ice. Zooplankton, phytoplankton, fish, birds, aquatic mammals, terrestrial animals, and plants. We often refer to the Arctic here, but in fact, it is the geographic North Pole. It is the point at 90 degrees north latitude on Earth and the origin of all meridians. This is only a hypothetical point and it differs from Earth's magnetic North Pole. The magnetic North Pole is a real location, situated on Parthas Island, Canada, and is 1,600 kilometers from the geographic North Pole, with coordinates 82.7 degrees north latitude, 114.4 degrees east longitude. The geographic North Pole is the intersection point of Earth's rotation axis with the surface in the northern hemisphere, and it is defined as the reference for latitude. Here, if vertically upward, we would encounter a fixed point on the celestial sphere. In contrast to the Arctic, Antarctica is a continent surrounded by ocean. Antarctica is a continent with diverse mountain and lake systems, surrounded by ocean. With an area of over 14 million square kilometers, Antarctica is considered the largest desert in the world. The Antarctica we often refer to as the geographic South Pole, the point at -90 degrees latitude on Earth. It is the southernmost point on Earth's surface and is opposite the North Pole. There is no point on Earth south of Antarctica, and no country owns this continent. Antarctica differs from the magnetic South Pole because Earth's rotational axis and magnetic axis do not coincide. The magnetic South Pole is the point where all south ends of compass needles, no matter where placed, point towards. And at the magnetic pole, the compass needle will point perpendicular to the ground. 48.5 inches south latitude and 137 degrees 51. Antarctica is defined as the point at 2,800 meters above average sea level, serving most purposes. S rotation axis intersects the planet, opposite the Earth's North Pole. However, in reality, Earth's rotation axis has precession, so this definition is insufficient for high-precision tasks. The geographic coordinates of Antarctica are conventionally simplified to 90 degrees south, as this latitude defines the geographic South Pole, while longitude at this point has no defining significance. When a longitude needs to be specified, it can be considered as 0 degrees west longitude. In Antarctica, all directions are north. For this reason, when standing at the South Pole of Earth, no matter which direction you go, you are heading north, along the meridians. Antarctica is the 5th largest continent in the world, with an area nearly twice that of Australia. About 98% of Antarctica's surface area is covered by an ice sheet at least 1,600 meters thick. Therefore, living conditions in Antarctica are considered the harshest on Earth. It holds the most records among continents, including coldest, windiest, driest, and highest average elevation above sea level. Although it snows all day, Antarctica is an extremely dry land. It is known as a desert with an average annual precipitation of only about 200 millimeters along the coast and much less further inland. Temperatures in Antarctica can drop to -89 degrees Celsius. Due to the extreme conditions, there are no permanent residents here. Along Antarctica, only about 1,000 to 5,000 people live at research stations. Even animals and plants are extremely scarce. Only species capable of adapting to the cold can survive, including algae, protozoa, bacteria, fungi, and a few animals and plants. Since all meridians converge at Antarctica, any time zone can be used on this special continent. Although choosing a time zone sounds interesting, it is actually quite complicated and easily confusing. Since there are no permanent residents in Antarctica, this is not a concerning issue. For practical reasons, the time zone in Antarctica is often determined based on territorial sovereignty claims. However, scientists and researchers working in this part of the southern hemisphere can freely choose the time zone most convenient for them. There are various reasons explaining this issue. First, do you know why there are often snow patches on high mountain peaks? It's because the higher you go, the lower the air temperature, and this also explains why Antarctica is so cold. Most of this continent is over 3,000 meters above average sea level. Second, it should be remembered that the Arctic is essentially a frozen ocean, and water retains heat better than land. The warmer ocean water transfers heat through the ice layers. This prevents the Arctic from reaching the extreme low temperatures found on the land surface of Antarctica. Third, Antarctica faces harsh weather conditions throughout all 4 seasons. Around July, when Earth is farthest from the sun, the northern hemisphere tilts toward the sun, so it remains warm. Meanwhile, the southern hemisphere tilts away from the sun, making it even colder. At that time, Antarctica is also in winter, making it doubly cold. Although they cannot become human habitats, the Earth's north and south poles still contribute positively in their own ways. Both polar regions serve as crucial climate regulation centers for the Earth. They help regulate temperature and provide stable climates for humans. And when Arctic ice melts due to climate change, the global climate becomes unstable. In both the Arctic and Antarctic, ice coverage changes seasonally, expanding in winter during prolonged darkness and shrinking as it melts in the sunny summer. Most of the fluctuation in ice coverage in both the Arctic and Antarctic is due to floating sea ice expanding and melting. Since the Arctic is almost entirely surrounded by land, its sea ice is less mobile than Antarctic sea ice. Due to higher convergence, Arctic sea ice is typically 2 to 3 meters thick, while Antarctic sea ice is only about 1 to 2 meters thick. On an annual average, Arctic sea ice area ranges from a minimum of 6.5 million square kilometers to a maximum of 15.6 million square kilometers. For comparison, Antarctic sea ice area has a minimum of less than 3.1 million square kilometers and a maximum of up to 18.8 million square kilometers. However, the total ice volume in Antarctica, including continental and sea ice, is larger than in the Arctic. The Antarctic ice sheet is up to 4.8 kilometers thick and covers about 13.7 million square kilometers. It is estimated to contain 90% of the world's total ice. Although images of once heroic explorers planting flags on Antarctica have become iconic, it remains the only land on Earth not owned by any country or individual. This status is maintained by the Antarctic Treaty. Under the treaty, all land and resources on this continent are to be used only for peaceful and scientific research purposes. It is entirely different from the lives of over 4 million people living within the Arctic Circle, in small towns or cities like Barrow, Utqiagvik, in the US, Tromsø in Norway, or Murmansk and Salakard in Russia. Many countries covet the resources in the Arctic Circle, estimated by US scientists to contain less than a quarter of the world's undiscovered oil reserves. Currently, Russia is taking clear steps to assert sovereignty over a vast territory in the Arctic. This area is estimated to potentially hold enormous oil reserves, up to 10 billion tons. In response to this move, the US government also sent icebreakers to survey and map the territory in the Alaska region. In Antarctica, there are also hypotheses that natural gas reserves exist on the southern continental shelf, particularly in the Ross Sea area. However, all extraction activities are completely banned under the Antarctic Treaty. Bottled water made from Arctic ice costs over 2 million Vietnamese dongs per bottle. A bottled water product sourced from Arctic ice, branded Shwebadi, when launched in the UK market, was priced at up to £80, equivalent to over 2.5 million Vietnamese dongs per bottle. Shwebadi water is harvested from icebergs off Shwebadi Island, and only 13,000 bottles are obtained each time. The manufacturer says it is an ideal gift for those wanting to explore the experience of seawater essence harvested from the Arctic region. In fact, penguins only live in Antarctica, while polar bears only inhabit the Arctic. Therefore, the small penguins cannot become a tasty meal for the giant bears. Meanwhile, as the ozone hole over Antarctica continues to expand, with an area 3 times the surface of the US, the Arctic also faces the risk of a similar disaster. However, the truth is that there is no actual hole. The concept of a hole here refers to an atmospheric region devoid of ozone, a chemical that protects our planet from the harmful effects of solar radiation. Ozone depletion in the northern hemisphere is lower than in the south, due to warmer Arctic temperatures limiting the formation of stratospheric clouds, the main agents of ozone destruction. The increasing ice melt is causing serious consequences. Researchers warn that the Earth's ice cover is becoming increasingly thinner. The Arctic is an extremely sensitive region to climate changes. Warming temperatures in the summer months cause 4 to 5 meter thick ice layers to begin melting. Scientists also warn that the 3.2 kilometers thick ice sheets in Greenland are melting at a very rapid rate and could be reduced by half by the end of this century. Antarctica, on the other hand, is the continent that holds 90% of the world's ice. But these very ice sheets on this frigid continent are a massive freshwater reservoir. According to scientists, it accounts for up to 70% of the Earth's freshwater. Scientific studies warn that the ice in Antarctica is melting at an increasingly rapid pace, and this is an undesirable phenomenon. Because if that happens, sea levels would rise by up to 70 meters. This number may not seem impressive at first glance, but it has the potential to cause widespread disaster for many regions on Earth. As of now, scientists have identified over 300 large lakes deep beneath the Antarctic continent. These lakes remain unfrozen due to geothermal heat from deep within the Earth, and become part of a vast hydrological network beneath the thick ice layer. Researchers believe these isolated lakes could host microorganisms that modern science has never known. Contrary to common belief, Antarctica is not only home to penguins and seals but also some other mysterious land creatures. The largest land animal native to Antarctica is just an insect with a modest length of 2 millimeters, named Belgica. This is mainly due to the harsh environment in Antarctica, which cannot sustain life for most terrestrial species. Although penguins and seals can occasionally be spotted on the coast, they do not actually live there. Even the seabirds we often see in documentaries on TV or the internet. They are merely visitors and do not originate from Antarctica themselves. The Belgica species can survive in the harsh climate thanks to its ability to burrow about 1 centimeter into the ice and live there for over 10 months. And it can still survive even when its body loses 70% of its water content. Antarctica is home to one of the saltiest bodies of water on the planet, called Don Juan Pond. Although most liquids in Antarctica freeze, Don Juan Pond maintains its liquid state. Even in winter, when temperatures in Antarctica drop to -50 degrees Celsius, this salty pond does not freeze. The pond can survive harsh weather conditions due to its salinity. Don Juan is the saltiest pond in Antarctica, with a salinity of over 47%. It also has the highest total dissolved solids in the world. For comparison, its salinity is 18 times that of ordinary seawater and 1.3 times that of the Dead Sea. Although Antarctica is known as the world's largest desert, it surprisingly also has rivers. One of the waterfalls discovered in the McMurdo Dry Valleys is Blood Falls. Research conducted by the University of Alaska Fairbanks indicates that the reason the water turns blood red is due to a high amount of pigments and minerals in the water reacting with oxygen upon exposure to air. Thus, the red color is formed by oxidized iron, similar to how iron turns rusty when corroded. Well, until recently, it was believed that the water discoloration was caused by algae. If you want to go to Antarctica, you must have your wisdom teeth removed and your appendix taken out before setting foot there. In the summer, the population in Antarctica ranges from 1,000 to 1,500 people. Most of them are researchers, and the rest are support staff and explorers. Most tourists have left, leaving only some support staff and long-term observing researchers. However, if you choose to go there in winter, you will have to grit your teeth against the cold and shiver from the freezing temperatures. The reason for this seemingly strange requirement is that in case of a medical emergency, you cannot be evacuated during winter. Even if you are assigned to work as a doctor in Antarctica, you are still required to undergo an appendectomy before departure.